Hello, welcome back to the Haven community inside the teenage mind. I'm your host, Nathan Lim, and I'm with the team at the Haven community to discuss an important issue. Originally, we had planned for this podcast series to be based on personal emotional struggles that the teenage society faces. However, 2020 once again proved to be the year full of surprises. In light of the recent events of the Black Lives Matter in response to the murder of George Floyd, we decided to create new episodes to discuss the importance of highlighting this movement with the teenage community. We believe without a doubt that issues like these must be discussed with any age group. No matter the time, the oppression of any person based on the color of their skin is unacceptable. In this episode, we'll be discussing the issues that have been circling recently, how we can educate ourselves as teens, our personal thoughts on everything happening in the moment, and background influences. Be sure to look out for part 2 of the discussion, in which we'll discuss further how we, as teenagers, can continue to discuss the situation and be supportive. To start our discussion off, I think it's important what has been going on lately. The discussion is open to whoever would like to start off.
Well, I would like to start off, and let me just start off by saying that 2020 has been a roller coaster, to say the least, with lots of ups and downs. And with the pandemic of COVID-19 preventing students from physically going to school and everyone being told to stay 6 feet away from each other or just stay home, we also, as of now, get to see the rise of the Black Lives Matter movement and how that's been taking up a lot more momentum during this time, especially after the incident with George Floyd, a 47-year-old African-American man who was killed by the police during an arrest in Minneapolis on May 25th, 2020. So that was kind of crazy.
Yeah, and furthering that, as a result of this in multiple cases, the Black Lives Matter has garnered much more attention, and it is quite an important movement as it allows people to stand up for racism faced by minorities, particularly like the Black community. Although I, as a brown teen, can't understand the pain and the fear they face, I understand this discrimination to some extent as an immigrant. Shining light on the situation is essential. White supremacy should not exist. People don't realize that it still does, but it shouldn't.
I think that's something that should be noted, quite frankly. For hundreds of years, the Black community faced oppression because of the color of their skin. And countless times, they have been treated like nothing or less because of what they look like. George Floyd's murder on May 25, thanks to 4 police officers, is not the only time we've seen police brutality and hate crimes. We've seen Breonna Taylor, a Black woman who was shot on March 13, 2020 in her own house because of police brutality and her skin color. Ahmaud Arbery was shot on February 23, 2020 while jogging, and a white male and his father shot him. These are just few of the so many hate crimes we've seen in the Black community. More shockingly enough, there were no reasons for these deaths to take place because these people have not committed large crimes. If the roles were reversed and we saw these quote-unquote victims as white people, these deaths would not be happening. I think it's unbelievable how we are in 2020 and we're seeing these things happening.
I definitely agree. And also, I feel like it's important to note that the Black Lives Matter movement, it's not a nascent issue. It's not just starting root right now. It's been going on for the longest time. And there was civil rights movement from the 1950s to the 1960s back then, where there's these great leaders who were born and were able to stand up for what they thought was right and seek justice for the inequalities that they believed were wrong in the society that they lived in. So it brings up the question that I'm like interested in, saying, are we going to see another wave of these great leaders one more time, like right now, today? Like, are we going to have voices that will be able to unite the many people who are fighting and protesting and lead the movement by storm? I know that protests have been seen all over the US, which is amazing to think about, from Arizona to Maine to New York, Idaho, and so many more. And protests have been able to reach out even to Canada, New Zealand, Brazil, and Italy. And just the thought of it gives me chills. Well, and it's clear to see that through the use of social media, word of mouth, and like news sites, different news sites, the spread of information has been going really quickly. And I think that's like amazing that it's able to happen.
Yeah, I totally agree. I feel like George Floyd's death was like the tip of the iceberg, as I see like so many other posts about different people throughout social media, and it's spreading like wildfire. I mean, like my peers and I share them as we can try and spread awareness. But I think it's really important that through this terrible incident, we can help the tons of others who are affected by racism and this type of injustice. It's like absolutely devastating to see the amount of people who have been treated unfairly. And as a person with like at least some bit of privilege, I don't understand how we like missed this and ignored this for so long. Like every day I have to remind myself that this isn't a new thing and it isn't like a recent spike of events. Like racism has been part of our country for centuries, like we've said before. And I just can't wrap my head around the fact that while our society has grown so much, people's minds have like stayed the same.
I totally agree that these things happening in the midst of all that's going on right now, it's just unbelievable and something that we all need to realize and take account for. So adding on to that, we also need to educate ourselves on this movement, on the Black Lives Matter movement. So the question I want to ask is, how can we first educate ourselves as teenagers and Gen Z members to help impact change?
Well, during events like this, it is very important that we educate ourselves by keeping up with reliable sources and always corroborating events that we see with other media sites. I know social media like Instagram, Snapchat, or Facebook is an easily accessible platform that many teens use, so it is one place to get news from. You can also do a simple search on the internet or YouTube. There are many posts, articles, and videos about the unfair and horrible treatment that the Black community experiences, so being rightfully educated is very, very important in a time like this.
I definitely agree. And yes, it is super, super important to educate ourselves because you don't want to restrict yourself to one news outlet or one social media source because they can be biased. And of course, they'll be biased. It's like no matter, it's a fact. And this is one of the many instances where ignorance isn't bliss, and that we as the youth and everyone should take it upon themselves to seek out a variety of different news outlets and see what's happening on social media. Because sometimes the news doesn't cover the whole truth that some people like bystanders record on social media and post. So it goes without saying that all news outlets have their biases and flaws, and also the social media outlets that you plan or you seek to listen and follow. So it's just having a different perspective is also very important. So I think, yeah, being able to look into a lot of different sources for your information is very important.
Yeah, I definitely agree that reading unbiased sources is really important so that we don't get the wrong idea or we're not like brainwashed per se. And also I think it's also important for us to like read and watch stuff that or media that portrays the situation in Black communities, like books and movies. And like a really good option that I found was The Hate U Give, which demonstrates the police brutality that can be found in our own society.
I love how it was mentioned that we should be looking at reliable and unbiased news sources because that is something that's truly significant to educating ourselves in the right way. We're living in a day and age where media outlets are being so prominent. We turn to social media, things like Twitter, Instagram, and Snapchat, and sometimes we really don't get the full scope and we don't get all the information that we need to truly educate ourselves on information. On social media, we need to be careful about the information we look at, and it's important that we educate ourselves from people that we can trust and we can validate. Literally just the other day, I was scrolling through Instagram and I saw this post that said every reshare or post story reshare would donate 10 cents to the Black Lives Matter movement, but it was later realized that it could be a potential scam. And I think that's something we all need to realize and be aware of and definitely be careful of because there are so many sources on the internet and the media that we can believe to be true, but it might not actually be true. One source that I saw that was really amazing and significant was blacklivesmatter.carrd.co, which had just amazing resources and external links that just gave me information on the movement and places to sign petitions and donate to causes and just really take action in the right way.
Yeah, while I agree that we should be looking at reliable news sources, I am definitely guilty of just seeing all my news on Instagram. Like I did go and search some information about the protests and what exactly was happening since my friends were there and I heard so many stories on social media. But like other than that, I really just look at all the posts my friends share to get the news. And while it might not be the best source, I feel like you can tell when things are fake or real. Like there are easy flaws you see when it's fake. And I honestly haven't seen that many fake posts. But I also feel like to some extent, all these like news outlets I see outside are pretty biased, and it's really hard to get a sense of what really happened outside.
Yeah, that's totally true. And as I said before, as youth, it is important that we see like current events and what's happening through the lens of many different stories and perspectives, social media to news outlets on TV. And it's important to know also that this issue isn't black and white and it's full of like twists and turns and has much depth to it. So it's even more important to not only look at one specific source throughout like your whole time researching, and we can learn more about these protests and what we can do to help. And that's what's really important as of right now. And as youth, we can help spread awareness. We can sign petitions, write letters, and get others involved in the movement and learn more about it. And it's definitely like our position right now as youth and being educated and understanding what's going on to enlighten others on what's happening with the current issues surrounding the Black Lives Matter movement. And going off of the understanding that it's really, really, really important to know what's happening in the world around us, I was just wondering, what's your guys' thoughts on the causes and potential effects of the movement, the Black Lives Matter?
I personally believe that the Black Lives Matter movement is quite revolutionary as it brings light to the great discrimination many don't know exists. I believe that this movement is essential in pointing out the discrimination and the attempt to eliminate it for once and for all.
Yeah, I want to add on to that I feel like the protests, like there's been a lot of peaceful protests, and I think that they have every right to protest because they're protesting because they're angry and they're hurt and they want to be heard and they want there to be justice for George Floyd and for everybody else that has been murdered by police officers, and they want there to be a change. And I think that they have every right to act the way they've been acting.
Yeah, I definitely agree because personally, I am all for the protest, like because as Martin Luther King Jr. once declared, whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. Like I stand with the Black community that is tired of being murdered by an out of control violent police force. Like I believe that enough is enough. And like another thing that Martin Luther King Jr. said was that Black lives begin to end the day we become silent about the things that matter. And like we can see how these protests have impacted the world and how altogether we have brought those cops to be punished for their cruelty against an innocent man. And like by raising our voices and asking for change, it can definitely come about.
The Black Lives Matter movement wasn't just started to serve justice to George Floyd's murder, but to all the precious other lives lost to police brutality. As said before, George Floyd is just the tip of the iceberg people see. It's extremely, and I reiterate, extremely important that the Black Lives Matter keep going and fighting for what is right. Justice needs to be served to all the precious past lives lost and to further prevent this from all happening again. Just recently, the officers reliable for George Floyd's murder were pressed with charges, which is excellent, but we must keep the same energy to fight for what's right so that police brutality ends and justice is served before, like I previously said. I personally believe that the peaceful protests are correct and in every way valid because they have the right to do so. These peaceful protests aren't causing any harm, but instead they're fighting for what is right.
Despite peaceful protests occurring and not working out, I still think that it's better than having such violent protests that portray the Black Lives Matter movement and protesters in a negative light. Like, all the violence achieves is a bad rep for the protesters, and nothing really changes in terms of awareness for the actual movement. It honestly takes away from the movement of Black lives and puts emphasis on Black violence.
Yeah, so in regards to the violence, I'm definitely torn with the protests because while I indubitably support the peaceful protests, I think it's important that we don't forget that we are in a pandemic and like we have to at least maintain or attempt to maintain some degree of social distancing. Nevertheless, going back to the violence, there's still some parts of the movement, particularly looting and the aggression towards the police, that I don't necessarily agree with or that I feel are rather controversial and questionable. So I feel like with the looting, I understand that it brought attention to the movement, but because of the way and the manner in which the news portrays it, it makes it out to be as though the movement is bringing about anarchists. And I've heard about how people talk about there being this sort of contract with the government, between the government and the people, that's not being upheld, I guess, by the government. And so people and the citizens who are supposed to be protected by the police rather than being attacked by the police are now looting and rejecting the policies instituted by that government that initially broke the contract. I think that people alone are powerful enough to make a change and make an impact with their protests, and the accumulation of like some thousands of hundreds of protesters, it's rather like amazing, I guess, how the issue at hand is being addressed. And I simply believe the looting gave the protests a bad reputation because, as while it definitely garnered attention, it felt more as though people were using the excuse of the Black Lives Matter movement. It felt like there was a strong likelihood that many weren't doing it candidly and were doing it solely for the movement. They saw it, to me, they saw it as an opportunity and felt as though it was like a valid excuse to pursue legitimate crime. And what ended up happening was that violence was used between people, like rather than as intended against the government. People, were actually just fighting against each other. And so violence or damage are being committed by those looters to regular peaceful protesters even. And I'm not too economically literate, but it seems like those damages to the businesses come to bite taxpayers and behind, as someone has previously mentioned, and to nevertheless hurt some of those many small businesses involved. So there isn't really any magic to solve the problem. Instead, there's like a cycle that comes right back to us.
Like it was similarly mentioned earlier, I wouldn't say George Floyd's death was the direct cause of the Black Lives Matter movement, like accelerating right now, but rather it was like a catalyst. His death made people realize that police brutality towards the Black community must be stopped before the lives of more people are taken. And I think it made people realize that we have to actively advocate for this cause in order for any changes to actually be made. And I feel like the peaceful protests are really inspiring in a way because people of all different backgrounds are making a joint effort to fight the systemic racism that is obviously present in our society. And so looting has also been paid attention to a lot and is a part of the protests that have been happening. So what do you guys think about this?
I think that it's really important to shine light on looting as it's one of the major aspects in the Black Lives Matter movement. I believe that the peaceful protests were quite effective and ethical, but the looting is getting out of hand. A lot of the people are not only like attacking government businesses, but they're also attacking small businesses that may not even be able to fend for themselves. And I don't think that they understand the stake they're putting them at. And in addition to that, I feel like at this point, the people that are putting these businesses out of they're causing a lot of destruction to these businesses. I don't think they understand that the money that's coming from this destruction is gonna be part of our taxpayers' money.
Yeah, I agree. And I want to add on to that by saying that the looting wasn't exactly caused by the protesters. It was mostly people that had no intentions of protesting at all. And they were kind of just there for their own will because they wanted to break in and steal from stores and take advantage of the situation, just personally benefit themselves. So I feel like they're not really thinking about taxpayers. They're not thinking oh, if we destroy and we rob this, it's gonna come out of our pockets. These people didn't really think about the consequences. I guess they kind of just wanted to take advantage of the opportunity they had to just kind of just go and steal stuff.
Yeah, breaking into businesses and stealing simply just shows how people are taking this time of sadness and disappointment and allowing them to commit all sorts of crimes. And it's just sad how people who are looting are only thinking of themselves and their benefits instead of making a change by raising their voice, which can have more of an impact. It's important to note that those who participate in looting at night are overlap those who march peacefully as protesters during the day. I believe distinguishing these two groups is essential to uncovering the truth that Black lives the Black Lives Matter movement is not about inciting violence. It's just about bringing justice and equality.
Now, it makes total sense of why protesters are trying to loot the stores, yet it just causes harm rather than proving a point. I've seen multiple videos and clips on social media in which protesters have looted stores with immigrant owners and, more importantly, Black-owned businesses. I saw a video where a Black man whose store was broken into was absolutely devastated with what had happened, and that honestly just made my heart break. This got me to realize that stores that are being looted for absolutely no reason could have so much more done to actually raise awareness rather than trying to bring down the already declining economy. I've also seen videos where people are literally happily just going shopping and carrying bags of clothes from stores that are being broken into and looted, and it had nothing to do with the Black Lives Matter movement and really didn't accomplish anything.
Yeah, and also I feel like the looting has been unfair towards the Black Lives Matter movement because it really it shed a bad light on them as was said before, and most of the looting that's taking place actually has no relation to the protests. And yeah, I just think it's unfair that most of the media coverage has been on the looting rather than the peaceful protests.
I definitely agree with the points made about the looting situation going on at hand. I think it's important to note that looting and protesting are totally different things. They're on the opposite ends of the spectrum right now. And the people that are looting are actually taking away the focus of the purpose of protesting going on. So I think it's important to note that there is a significance to protesting, but there is the light of looting that kind of blurs that focus. So I hope that people will soon come to realize that protesting is actually an important thing of the Black Lives Matter movement, and it is an effort to show people around us and show the leaders around us that Black Lives Matter, that justice must be served, and that proper action must be taken place. We've definitely seen a lot happening in areas where protests are occurring, and I continue to hope that people will continue to take action wherever they are, whether it's outside or at home, by signing petitions, donating, educating themselves, whatever it takes to truly emphasize the purpose of the Black Lives Matter movement. I want to shift the focus of our discussion a bit and talk about how individuals with large platforms and followings are supporting and showing awareness for the Black Lives Matter movement.
So I'd like to talk about that. And I know that many celebrities worldwide have donated to organizations in order to support the Black Lives Matter movement, which prompted many of their fans and followers to do the same. I can personally say that seeing my faves support the movement not only increased my support and respect towards them, but also motivated me to become more involved in supporting the Black Lives Matter movement and also becoming more aware of what's going on. Seeing them donate made me want to donate. So I began looking into ways that I could and had my family donate some money to a few organizations. I know that I'm not the only one who's been like this, so I really like seeing people who we look up to and supporting the right cause and trying to further this movement by raising awareness.
I agree. I have donated and signed petitions because seeing many celebrities protesting for the Black Lives Matter movement definitely makes more people want to join. Because although they are famous, they still join others in doing the right thing. There have been many videos of them speaking out and coming together to make a difference. And the ones who are willing to work behind the scenes and do things that are constructive, that don't bring them any fame or glory or money, those are the ones that activists really respect and look up to.
Yeah, I believe celebs influence people because that's why they're called influencers. So I believe posting about the movement and their support allows the viewers not only to be informed about what's going on, but also it shows that the celebrities actually do care and they support the cause. And I know for me, it played a huge part in the movement because it started to get more awareness as it deserved. Even though it was long overdue, at least it started to get more recognition every day. And the posts helped, and of course the petitions and stuff. So I just agree that this whole entire thing of celebrities posting and informing their own fans allowed like a whole community, state, or even like a whole nation to come together and say like, we need change and we need it now.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And just to go off of what everyone else said, I believe that these influencers are using their power wisely and they're using the platform that they have gained in a stronger way. It also, like, I think it's really effective in informing this great situation to a lot of the people who may not know what's going on. And I think in some extent, it also does affect the way people have a perspective on this idea. It may also change the minds of many if they don't know what the real problem is. So I think that it's really effective.
Yeah, I totally agree with everyone about how much celebrities have helped, but it's also really disappointing to see how many people haven't stood up. Like, not only just in my friend circle, but like quite a few celebrities haven't talked about this at all. And it's like, you've noticed, and it's like you should be talking about something. But I also wanted to talk about something else, like Anonymous. In so many movies and like in real life too, hackers are always seen like as really bad people, but in this case, like I'm not really sure because Anonymous finally came out of hiding after like 3 years and came not only to talk about the significant importance for Black lives, but also to like they said that they would expose the numerous accounts of systematic racism that happens every day. Like statistics have literally shown that police have killed at least one person every single day, except for like 20 days in the whole year. And that's devastating. Although, like, Anonymous hasn't said anything else, their video was a really big deal, and I believe that it spread even much more needed awareness about these problems.
So I agree that the help of like influencers and anonymous to communicate and gain momentum for the movement is rather important. Well, I'm not too sure how I feel about anonymous, although they kind of seem bougie and cool. But at the same time, I feel as though a lot of people need to be extremely wary of the message they're communicating and the manner by which they are conveying that message, particularly with anonymous, because I feel as though the legalities behind it are still debatable and controversial. And so, in terms of influencers and the manner by which they convey their message, I say this largely because some people, even influencers, can and do have rather extreme thoughts and can even jump to generalizations. Because I've seen and heard some protesters, whether it be on TV or from like personal anecdotes or from other people's anecdotes, that they'll curse at the police and call them racist or bigoted for simply doing their job. I don't necessarily believe that's right. We all have our beliefs, but it's important to make sure that we don't attack other people. Furthermore, it's important that we realize that not all police are bad. Like Governor Newsom had expressed on the news, many police put their lives on the lines to genuinely protect us. And so while some police, some of what the police have done is of some police, what they've done is abominable and just straight out wrong. We shouldn't forget that police are as every bit human as we are.
We've truly gone over a lot today, covering the scopes of the Black Lives Matter movement, what's been happening so far that caused this to spark again, and these issues that should be prominent in our thoughts and encourage us to use our voices, our privilege, and our resources to take action. I think the important takeaway in that is that all of us need to realize the importance of the Black Lives Matter movement and how these kinds of hate crimes and oppressions need to stop. You can learn more about the Haven community and our team by going to www.thehavencommunity.net. You can email us at contact@thehavencommunity.net or by checking us out on our Instagram at Haven_community. In our next episode, we're going to continue our discussion on the Black Lives Matter movement and society, as well as our personal perspectives on the impact of our voices.